All right, everybody, welcome into the Sideline Fantasy Show. This is your hosts, E-Rock and Jordan Charles here. We're back at you for the Week 4 games. How we doing today, Crimmy Charles?
Pretty good.
Not too shabby, not too shabby. Well, so far the league is going not great for me. 0-3, so it's kind of devastating. I remain the only winless team in the entire league so far. Crim, on the other hand, you're 3-0 right now. How you feeling?
Pretty decent. Hoping my team can kind of come back full strength and I can still be undefeated, but we'll see.
Only 2 undefeated teams left, 1 winless team left, both of them on this show tonight, which is just wonderful. But yeah, we're going to start talking about the big transactions of the week. We actually just had a trade go down involving the two of us right before we went on air here today. So we'll talk about that here in a bit. But we always want to talk about the transactions. Do you see anything really too noticeable here on the transactions, Krim, this week? I know the biggest point spender was Jeff Wilson, picked up by Chad. Greg Ward was 7 by you. Tunyon, the tight end, 6 by Tyler. Keelan Cole, 5. Goff, 4. A little bit later in the week, we had a couple more transactions. But is there anything that really sticks out to you here that could maybe be beneficial long term?
No, not really. I mean, the Jeff Wilson pickup by Chad with 16 is kind of surprising, only because
Right.
it didn't. McKinnon wasn't really ruled out by any means. Obviously, Wilson played well in regards to fantasy, but didn't really get a lot of yardage when it came to the volume he was given when it came to running the ball. So 16 isn't awful. I mean, if you use him for a week, you might have to kind of move him around afterwards. I don't know if he'll be kind of part of that backfield once Mostert returns, but it could pay off. It could not. 16 points, though, isn't really a bad investment right there.
Yeah, that's still a decent chunk, though. When you think we only have $100, 16 points is almost a fifth, not quite of your budget there. But it's interesting. He didn't really run the ball a whole lot more of a receiving back last week. Sounds like he's already trying to deal him off in a potential trade. Yeah, but I'm not seeing too much else here. Obviously, Jacksonville's going to throw the ball around a lot, so Keelan Cole can be interesting. But a lot of people thought highly of him last year, and he didn't do a whole lot either. Like I said, later in the week, he had a couple more acquisitions. 5 points was paid for Dalton Schultz. Jay picked him up. Been playing pretty well the last couple of weeks after Jarwin went down. Scaling for 4 points. I picked up Hooper for 2 points, and Kyle picked up Gostkowski, who was absolutely amazing last week, getting 25 points last week, but now on a bye. So I don't even know if he still has them. So with that being said, let's look at the 2 trades that happened this week, Krim. There was no trades that happened in week 3, but we did have a couple that happened in week 4, both involving tight ends, both involving me. What was your initial reaction to Noah Fant for Darrell Henderson?
I mean, Darrell Henderson seemed like somebody who we kept passing around. I feel like he was probably on everyone's team at one point in time for the first week, and then he didn't play well, didn't really see the field, and then week 2 he kind of exploded. So the trade itself was pretty fair. It bolstered positions that you both needed. Don't really see anything wrong with them. Obviously, Noah Fant on Thursday did get hurt, was carted off. Is questionable, so I don't know how bad the injury is, but hopefully for Kyle's sake, it is not too bad.
Yeah, it's listed as week to week, and it's one of those things where Noah Fant I picked up off waivers. I drafted Darrell Henderson, and it always sucks to kind of bite the bullet like that and realize you have to give something up for something you already had. But sometimes pride goes before the fall, and you got to suck that pride up if you want to make your team better. I feel like I'm getting a 15 to 20 touch back at this point. Malcolm Brown, who really had all the touches for the Rams in week 1, has been non-existent these last couple weeks, and Henderson's not. It's not like he's had a 30-yard, 2-touchdown game. He's had 80 with a touchdown, 100 with a touchdown, and he really does seem like to be the lead back there. So if I could get that for, waiver wire tight end, I'll take it, especially when I had Ertz on my team, right? Well, now that's changed. And now Zach Ertz, you offered the trade earlier today. I kind of sulked on it, let it marinate a little bit. Ertz for Myles Gaskin and TJ Hawkinson. What was your perspective on this one?
I just needed a potential upgrade at tight end. I know Hawkinson has been playing well, so he hasn't really been someone I wanted to trade. But with Ertz, I feel like there's gonna be a time, and hopefully it's this week, where he gets back into that role of that tight end one, wide receiver one kind of guy for the Eagles. The upside there I like a lot, and I wasn't giving up a lot in this deal. I mean, I'm giving up Hawkinson, who I picked him off the waiver wire after the draft, and same with Gashin. I paid Fab for him, but if and realistically, I'm paying 25 Fab at that point for Zach Ertz. I don't think I'm really going wrong there.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have looked at this trade after the draft, you'd have been like, "What the hell? Why are you giving up Ertz for that?" Right? But that's fantasy football for you. You got Hawkinson, who actually had a lot of potential last year, was banged up a little bit. But Detroit's going to throw the ball a ton. We've seen that. They're going to continue to do it, throwing it 40, 45 times a game. And Hawkinson, I think, can remain. And even you said he can remain a top 10 tight end in fantasy this year. So I think I get something there, and I get that running back depth. Gaskin really has had 3 decent fantasy weeks so far. Week 1 he was at 8.6, but ever since then you picked him up 11, 12 points last week on over 25 touches. So Jordan Howard still looks like he might be that goal line guy. Breda looks absolutely non-existent in that offense, and they also look like he's going to be their passing down back. So I'm hoping Gaskin can keep that going on, because my backs, if you would have said look at my backs after the draft, you might have laughed. But I mean, I have Derrick Henry coming back next week. I have Darrell Henderson, who might be 20 touches. I have Gibson, who's starting to maybe take over that role in Washington, and Gaskin looks like he has the role in Miami. So not big name guys, but I do feel like I'm solidifying my running back position a little bit. But I do need a win this week, though. So I know Henry's on a bye and he's just sitting on my bench. But if I could get through this week without Henry and get a win, I think things are looking up for my chances. But we'll see. But those are the 2 trades this week, obviously both involving tight ends. Nothing crazy happening. And before we move on to the matchups here, Krim, um, does the waiver, I kind of asked the same question last week, and we did get a couple trades. Nothing, Ertz, you can maybe borderline say blockbuster, but nothing super, super crazy yet. Do those start happening soon? What has been your take based on your conversations, based on what you've heard people say? What is your take so far on the hot stove in Sideline Fantasy? How has it looked this year?
I mean, I haven't really gone out and looked for a blockbuster myself per se, but what I've kind of ran into at times when kind of trying to just field it in general, it's been a lot of people being hesitant to kind of trade those guys. It makes sense. I mean, they're pretty big pieces on your team, but at the same time, I've seen this year that a lot of the smaller guys, the smaller pieces on your squad, kind of have been not outperforming your bigger top draft picks, but either just kind of staying on the same pace as them or edging them by a little bit. Just like those dudes like Russell Gage, for example, has been playing on the same page essentially as Julio Jones, if you look at the numbers. So it's kind of a game that we're getting into where the name carries weight, the numbers carry weight, but a lot of people are kind of weighing that name very heavily.
Yeah, for sure. I think people are still definitely going off names. Early in trades, I like going off where you're taking in the draft, right? Because you do hear a lot of trade chatter after the draft, and when you go by that, and sometimes you get offers where someone's offering a guy that was taken in the 4th round for your 3rd round pick, and you just sit there and say, well, if I really wanted that guy, I would have taken him, right? But as you can't really look at where you drafted them anymore. Hell, I got Ertz in what, round 4 or 5? As you mentioned, you got Gaskin and Hawkinson off waivers. So eventually you got to stop looking at that. And I think there's some teams that wait too long to make a move, and some teams that, you could say the opposite, where they make the move maybe too soon. And you can look at it from both perspectives. But right now, names are going to stop becoming a thing here soon. Production's going to be becoming the thing. And if you're not producing, then you're not a name. And that's why, my running backs of Henderson and Gibson might not look the greatest, but they're not big names. But there's also big names that aren't doing as great right now, and they're really needing to step up to the plate. And, we're going to kind of see where that lies for some people. So it'll be interesting, but we'll see if that hot stove trade waiver wire heats up. But let's look at the first matchup here, Crimmy. It is your matchup, Nuke Jukem versus Gotham City Rogues of Jay. 2-1 versus a 3-0 matchup. It's going to be a good one. Jay has won 2 in a row. You've not lost yet on the year, but Jay is projected for the win. He's got a Monday night guy, a couple Sunday night guys. You have a few night guys as well. This matchup probably won't be decided until Monday night. But what is your kind of optimism thoughts about heading into your own matchup here?
I mean, a lot of it for me rides on, well, outside of Ezekiel Elliott kind of getting into his own again. Hopkins, I mean, if he doesn't play, not that I don't have bodies to put in there because I do, but if Hopkins doesn't play, I feel like it kind of hinders the value of Murray just a tad bit. I mean, Hopkins himself has been fantastic for me, so that's kind of a big piece to lose. He's a wide receiver 3 right now. He's had over 16 points every game. Only 1 touchdown so far in the year. So to say you've had over 16 points every game and only scored once in 3 games
is
pretty damn good. So missing somebody like that is going to be, it will hurt. But
he's got a lot of yards.
That he does miss that game, I feel like I have some decent guys in Gage, Renfro. I'd have to toss in more than likely Greg Ward on the Sunday night game, which I'm relying on 2 pass catchers now from Philadelphia, but who knows what will happen there. And obviously missing Godwin. I mean, he's going to be gone for this week, probably gone for next week too, just because they play on a Thursday night. So it's a short week for him. He won't be back at that point. He's kind of somebody who has missed now 1 game already. He misses this one, so it makes 2. He'll miss the 3rd game and come back more than likely week 6 against Green Bay. Having him out as well and not having the luxury of kind of placing my receivers and kind of letting them sit kind of sucks. But at the same time, on the other side of things, Jay kind of has some running backs who have shown promise for sure, have shown they can get things done, but we haven't seen enough consistency from these guys within their careers to see if they're the kind of the real deal here. He's got Jerry McKinnon, he's got my boy Mike Davis there in Carolina, so I think that's where it kind of, the game itself may come down to is the running backs that we have, and a lot of Tyler Lockett for me. I mean, that's a big matchup there. He's been fantastic too. But playing Miami, if they get up by, 14 early, 21 early, and Lockett's not really involved, how involved will he be kind of going down the stretch with that team, not kind of airing it out as much?
Yeah, I think the running back situation is interesting because McKinnon and Mike Davis, you're not going to probably like very much long term. But McKinnon's now owned in 93% of leagues, has been doing pretty well so far on the season, just getting in the end zone, kind of getting his yards here and there. And we'll see how Mozart's role is affected when he comes back. But McKinnon really is doing a solid job there. Mike Davis obviously is going to be that guy for a little bit until McCaffrey comes back. Had a good fantasy week last week, and hopefully that train can keep rolling in terms of where Jay's at. But you got a big tight end matchup in Kittle and Ertz. That's a big one as well. You mentioned how great Hopkins has been. Even I didn't expect this many yards coming from Hopkins in these first 3 games. Pretty impressive totals there. A lot of big names here. Kyler Murray has been great for you going against Carolina. You know how their defense has been so far in the season. And this is all with Godwin and Mozart out for you, and you're still projected for almost 110 points. So I think any team that loses this game is still feeling pretty good about their team. I think even Jay at 2-2 will still feel good about his team, especially when Connor's off his bye and he gets him back. And I think even you, if somehow you lose this game, knowing that Godwin and Mozart were out, I still feel like you're feeling pretty good about your team at 3-1. But this is also one of those games with Godwin and Mozart out that getting to 4-0 could be the difference between an end of the season bye and playing in the first round of the playoffs. So I'm sure you're looking for this win as much as possible. Starting off 4-0 in division play would be nice, Crimmy. You know it, I know it. That would be nice.
For sure.
And what's the next matchup?
Next up, we have your matchup, Chop Squad, Trey, and back-to-back and back again. Not looking likely. Eric Foreman at 0-3.
Yeah, I mean, we got Trey, who started off 1-0, looked pretty good, has lost 2 in a row. Still a very good team with Jacobs. Jonathan Taylor's been great for him. Nick Chubb. His running backs have been dynamic and awesome for him. But when your receivers you're rolling out there are Brandon Cooks and Robbie Anderson, and I know Anderson's been good. I know he has. Does he keep that up? We will see. Are you super confident in him as a number one? I'm not so sure on that. So I think his receivers has hurt him, but his running backs more than make up for it. He's been kind of playing quarterback roulette so far these first few weeks, but he's going to go with Deshaun Watson this week, and we'll hopefully see a better Vikings defense on my end. Me, I'm desperate. I'm 0-3. I'm the only team in the league that does not have a win yet. I like my matchups this week, but I am without Derrick Henry. And having Derrick Henry on a Monday or Tuesday night would have been really, really cool to see, just so I could have known, hey, here's a running back that's going to get 25 carries, and you're down 15 or 20, and I can watch that game. That's not the case. Derrick Henry's out, but it could be a blessing in disguise if I can somehow win this week and still manage to have no bye week for the rest of the season for that hog in Derrick Henry. How do you see this matchup, Crimmy?
Um, to me, it's pretty. I would say pretty. I wouldn't
It's
even
even.
say it's pretty even. Mainly because the edge that you have on the receivers kind of balances out with the edge that he has on you and the running backs. Those running backs I trust more for sure. The biggest thing here for Trey would be Deshaun Watson and Brandon Cooks kind of coming into their own now and having a good matchup in Minnesota. I mean, that team has been pretty bad in the secondary. They're obviously running the ball very well. The offense is kind of clicking on all cylinders. That Texans team might be throwing the ball quite a bit. And if you're throwing the ball and you got the guy throwing the ball quite a bit, you've got opportunities for points. And if you have his probably first look, you're going to have an opportunity for even more points. So to me, that's the biggest thing for him. And for you, it's just Lamar getting back on track, man. Like last week, he looked very lost, not in the offense itself, but just trying to get back into a game, having to throw his way back into a game against the Chiefs. It was hard to watch in a way. Obviously, like, he's still electric and very fun to watch, but for a fantasy guy like you and I, the game itself was just difficult to watch, and just watch him score you all 14 points when you're expecting 25 plus every week from this guy.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think you hit a good point. I think the quarterback matchup might be the difference in this one when you really think about it, because I have a feeling, and I know Washington's been okay, I have a feeling this is one of those games that Lamar Jackson does break out in. I think this really could be a 30, 35-point game for Lamar Jackson against Washington. And in the same breath, that Minnesota defense hasn't been great this year. Could you say the same where Deshaun Watson finally gets his first 25, 30-plus point performance? I think as much as we're looking at all the other positions, and as much as sometimes people don't mention the quarterback, Deshaun Watson versus Lamar Jackson, that's going to be a big fantasy matchup this week, which might be the difference on who kind of has that bigger game for sure. What's the next matchup?
Next up, we have Steve Fells and Pistol Pete's platoon, Chad and Peter.
Pistol Pleats Platoon, who already has 24, courtesy of Melvin Gordon, is off to a huge lead. And because of that 24, he's projected for 127. Peter looking to go 3-1 on the year after losing last week. Chad is at 1-2. Finally got his first win of the week last week against me. I like Peter's team. I mean, it's hard not to with that performance from Melvin Gordon. I think the Rams blow out the Giants. I think Jared Goff has a good game. I think Washington might have to throw the ball a lot. McLaurin should get a lot of chances. Aaron Jones has been amazing this year. Going against that Atlanta defense, I see no reason why Aaron Jones isn't a good play this week. I like Peter's matchups, and this could have been with Melvin Gordon getting 12. I think I really like his matchups this week. I think that Dallas-Cleveland game could be close. Mixon's a little banged up. Allen Robinson, Indy, I think that Bears-Colts game might be ugly. We'll see. DJ Moore on Pat Pete. I like Peter's matchup here. I think he takes this one and gets to 3-1. What's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, obviously the biggest thing for Peter is going to be Aaron Jones. Like, that's kind of your end-all, be-all. Not necessarily for the team entirely, but running back-wise. With now Lazard out for the year, probably the rest of the year, by the looks of things. And if Devontae does not play come Monday night, it's going to be very easy to key in on Aaron Jones. Yeah, you're giving Rodgers free reign, essentially, to kind of throw the ball around. But if he doesn't have the targets to hit that are going to kind of strike fear in your heart, it's not really going to be that difficult to kind of slow those guys down. So if they're stacking the box against Aaron Jones, as good as he is, as good as any running back is, it's going to be very tough to kind of beat a stacked box the entire game. So we'll see what happens with that. I would expect him to be pretty decent still. But on Chad's side of things, matchup wise aren't awful. Like you said, you pointed out, Allen Robinson, that Cleveland and Dallas game could be pretty big. So you've got Gallup and Prescott for Chad. Mixon. If Mixon were to miss the game, that to me is a big blow to Chad's team, just because if you're going to replace him, you're now only option essentially, well, you have two, is Mark Ingram, who hasn't really shown us much so far this year, even though that offense itself has been decent, and he should be pretty heavily involved in that offense that just wants to run the ball. Or Jeff Wilson, who is going to be behind McKinnon, and who knows kind of what his workload will be. Last week he had a good amount of carries. Will it translate into the same thing this week? Will the Niners find themselves down somehow and have to kind of claw back? The game script is going to be, kind of the end-all be-all for Wilson's involvement. But if Mixon doesn't play, you're going to have to kind of scramble, toss one of those two guys in, and just hope for the best.
I will say, I will highlight that Mark Ingram, even I'm surprised at his usage so far in Baltimore. I know they have a ton of backs there, Edwards, Dobbins, Ingram, Jackson or whatever. They got a lot of guys there that can really carry the ball, and I get that, but even I'm a little surprised that Ingram isn't even getting 10 touches a game. And I would have expected that to be him to be a bigger player for Chad here. James White on his bench as well, but you're right. If Mixon's really kind of having those little irritating. He's exactly what he was doing last year. Those 15, 20 touches, but 50, 60 yards and not getting in the end zone. And he's getting the yards, he's getting the touches, he's just not getting in the end zone, which can be frustrating. But I think Peter's got this one. Next matchup is it the bare necessities.
This is correct.
The bare necessities, Justin versus Dave. 2-1-2 teams going at it this week. And you could argue probably one of the more unluckier teams so far in the season is the bare necessities, Justin, because he leads his division in points, but is 1-2 on the year. Okay. And not only does he lead his division, he's the highest scoring team in the league by quite a bit. Especially in our division. He's the highest scoring team in the league, and he's 1-2 on the season. So he would probably be very, very irritated if he falls to 1-3. But he does, because of injuries, have Carlos Hyde starting. He would usually have Fournette there, and even Fournette hasn't been that great outside of 1 week. But he does have Ridley, who's been great. Evans has been great. Higbee. He's got AJ Green as his flex, and obviously he's got the number 1 running back in all of fantasy, which is made up for his RB2 slot in Alvin Kamara. Does the highest scoring team in the league go possibly to 1-3 this week, Krim, or do you like his matchups against Dave?
I like his matchups. I mean, I like matchups on both sides for sure. But when I look at it as a whole, I do like Justin's matchups more so. You're playing Carlos Hyde, who, if Carson doesn't play, will get a good amount of touches. If Carson does play, you're kind of playing with fire there. But at the same time, Hyde's still involved. Even with the limited amount of touches against Miami, he could very well match Gurley, because Gurley's up against a stout Green Bay defense. And Gurley has not shown us, again, much to kind of write home about. He's been decent, but nowhere near where we saw Gurley, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, where he was absolutely clear-cut the number 1 back in the league. So I like Justin's matchups more so. Having Kamara there, I don't know if playing Detroit kind of hurts him at all, just because they might be up pretty quickly. And obviously Ridley on Monday night closing it out. You got Rodgers closing it out on Monday night. Like the Monday night game for this one is pretty massive. You've got four big pieces in it, with Rodgers, Ridley, Julio, and Gurley. So that's massive. But just looking at it as a whole, I do like Justin's more. I mean, Dave's aren't bad. He's got some things that stick out, like Gurley and Gronkowski, but for the most part, they're somewhat even, except for those kind of two spots right there.
Yeah, for sure. I think, interestingly enough, kind of like what you were saying, is I kind of do like the matchup somewhat for Dave as well. I think Detroit, New Orleans could be a high scoring game. Green Bay's been a little shaky against the run this year. Could Gurley maybe go off and get in the end zone a couple times while also getting good yardage? Usually he kind of does one or the other. Gurley's actually been okay this year so far. He's not been horrible. So far on the season, but he's not getting a ton of touches. Julio against Green Bay, we'll see he's a little banged up. Boyd against Jacksonville should be interesting. Dave's riding that Gronk train. We heard him say it earlier. He's really riding that Gronk train. That might hurt him because Higbee's been really good this year as the number 4 tight end. Gronk's barely getting involved in the passing game. So I think Jay should win this one, especially in the second here. There is some hot stove rumors reporting of another trade going through. That'll actually make it where he does not have to play Carlos Hyde this week. So we'll see about that. Next matchup is Rob and the Fear Boners versus Kyle, my ball Zach Ertz. Both people have had someone going so far. Jamison Crowder got 13 for Rob, which I think basically 14, which I think he's fine with. 104 receiving yards. Nice game for him. Fant got 6 for Kyle. Got taken out of the game. Was doing pretty decent up until that point. Kyle's projected to, I mean, look at the projections on this game. It's within half a point. Rob 2-1, Kyle getting away with a win last week at 1-2. What do we think of this one?
Yeah, there are things on both sides that I do not like whatsoever. I'll point those out first. I don't really trust Fitzpatrick against Seattle. I know that defense hasn't been fantastic by any means, but he's going to throw the ball a lot. It's just a matter of can he kind of make the best out of that. That's just, for me, it's risky, especially when there's more options out there. And on Rob's side of things, I just don't like Devontae Freeman against the Rams. I mean, yeah, he's going to be busier, more than likely. But last week he had 10 yards. I mean, what more can you really expect from him? He's not going to come out and kind of give you that 100-yard, 1-touchdown game because it's his second game of the season. He hasn't gone through any training camps. He hasn't gone through anything, kind of practices throughout the preseason to kind of condition himself. So he's still kind of getting his legs under him. And to me, having to play that guy sucks. Obviously, he didn't play Frank Gore. He doesn't have Le'Veon. And those are his two benched running backs, so he has to rely on somebody like Freeman. But those places can kind of be made up elsewhere with somebody like on Rob's side. Dalvin Cook has a fantastic matchup. Can he pull numbers that would support, himself and an RB2? For sure. I mean, there's a way to do that, obviously, with Dalvin Cook in that matchup if they want to run the ball heavily, which they do. And on the other side of things with Kyle, Fitzpatrick isn't awful. He'll be picked up by the running backs that he has in David Johnson and in James Robinson, because those two guys, again, I think have good matchups as well. Johnson maybe not getting the volume you would want with a running back, but James Robinson is surprisingly getting a lot of touches and being very effective with those touches. So that's somebody that, against Cincinnati, who has a stout pass defense, if the Jaguars kind of want to keep this game close and or win this game, they're going to have to rely on him on the ground.
Yeah, Kyle, I think he's been playing a little quarterback roulette this year himself. I think if he's hoping that Fitzpatrick can be anywhere around a top 12 fantasy quarterback this year, he's fine with that. And, Fitzmagic's doing his thing so far early in the year after that dud of a first game, and we'll see if it can continue. David Johnson has not been good this year. I'll just be honest. He hasn't. He's had a couple productive fantasy games because of getting in the end zone, but his yards per carry has been awful, and I really wonder how long that stays. But you're right, Robinson's been great. Devontae Adams has been good this year. Tyreek Hill, we'll see what happens with that game. That could end up being a Tuesday game for Kyle there. Fant with the 6 kind of hurts him a little bit, but he also has Hilaire, so that New England defense though is decent. I got a feeling that KC New England game, I don't see a 35-31 game there. I think that could also stay closer to the 23-20 game that, KC saw with the Chargers earlier in the year. On the other end, Rob, like you said, having to go Freeman, I don't like that at all. They still said that's going to be a 3-man rotation back there, but Freeman should get more work. He barely had any work at all last week, so maybe he gets 7 carries this week. I don't know. But, it's never good going that. But, going against that Miami defense, Russell Wilson's got a chance to go off. Houston's defense hasn't been that good. Alan Thielen's got a shot. So we'll see this week. I'm actually a little surprised projection wise that both teams are projected for 112. We'll see about that. But Kyle really needs a win here. Not only would it be a big win for him, it could get him to 2-2 in division and beating Rob, who would also be 2-2. So I weirdly think this is a bigger game for Kyle than it is for Rob this week. But we'll see.
Yeah, to touch on one more thing here before we move on. Obviously, the New England Patriots Kansas City Chiefs game is massive for both these guys because you have the biggest targets on the biggest team in the NFL with Kelsey, Tyreek, and Edwards-Helaire on these rosters. Just now I saw that the Patriots testing came back and only one player, which was Cam, had tested positive. Everybody else came back negative. So that's a pretty good sign for the game moving forward. Obviously, we don't know what day they're going to play on, but once we kind of see that happen and we see Kansas City hopefully come back clean as well outside of that one practice quarterback, then there isn't really anything to worry about. But for right now, obviously things are crazy as we move on and kind of deal with these things here. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. And since this game is closer to game time with it being tomorrow, we'll have to kind of figure out a way, I guess, to kind of deal with things if things kind of do get crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no doubt about it. Yep, it's going to be interesting to see how that really does play out, especially with the way the Titans game was postponed this week. So, next game, last game of the week is To Kill a Mockingbird and the Brady Bunch. Two of the lower projected scoring teams this week, and I do see why. Tyler is 3-0. I like his team a lot, but Malcolm Brown going in as your starting running back is not a good sign, okay? He's not getting any touches, not many at all. Did really good that first week, but it looks like it's trending towards Henderson's job. At least I sure hope so. You're also pairing that with Robert Woods. Chris Carson banged up a little bit, but should be okay. But it is game day decision for him. If Carson's also out, I think Tyler's got a very, very uphill battle of winning this one. His defense got him 6. We'll see. On Dana's end of the perspective, I like his matchups a little bit more. I think Kenyon Drake could have a big game against Carolina. I think Montgomery's going to get a lot of work against Indy. Josh Allen's been terrific. Beckham against Dallas might want to show out in that kind of big primetime game against the Cowboys. I like Dana's matchups a little bit more, but I can see why both teams are among the lower projected of the week.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I mean, you can kind of see, why. I mean, Malcolm Brown, like you said, is a big deal having to come in and be your starting running back. And that right there, if Carson doesn't play, looking at the depth that Tyler has, it's pretty bad considering McCaffrey is out. The only options you have at this point then are
You'd almost have
Jamal
to go
Williams,
yeah,
or Naeem Hines. Like, you don't have any other option. You can go pick somebody off of the waiver wire for sure and hope that they give you more production, but those two guys aren't really they're involved somewhat, but they are very hard to predict in regards to snap count just because their roles change week to week. You don't have one of these guys who comes in and is the number 2 back, is good for 8 to 10 carries a game or touches or whatever, and then that's where you're hoping to get your points. The week after Marlon Mack got hurt, Naeem Hines barely touched the ball. Came in, I think gave you 0.9 points or something crazy like that. Yeah, 0.9 with 4 receiving yards, and that was it. Last week, obviously, was different. They absolutely destroyed the Jets, so he was able to touch the ball more, had 21 yards rushing, 40 yards receiving. 8 points from a running back isn't awful. He would want more, but I think you can get with him. But they are playing Chicago. The game should be closer than that. You're going to rely more so on Jonathan Taylor at that point. So I would really, for Tyler's sake, hope that Carson plays, or your undefeated record may go down the toilet with Carson just being inactive straight up, because the running backs positions can give you a total at this point in time with those two guys can give you probably 10 combined, and that just won't cut it.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, a week after Justin Jefferson did what he did, and Dana did start Joshua Kelly last week. It seems as of right now, he's going to ride the Joshua Kelly train again, with Justin Jefferson sitting on his bench. Obviously, by the time you listen to this, or who knows if he puts him in at that point, Michael Thomas still out for Dana. Do you see Keelan Cole or Justin Jefferson being a better play than Josh Kelly, despite the amount of touches Josh Kelly's been getting?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Josh Kelly isn't in a bad spot by any means. Like, it's not a great spot. It's probably kind of in between, where Tampa Bay has been pretty good at stopping the run, but there's also been guys who have been able to kind of, get something in with them. So the matchup there is tough. Eckler might be able to open it up a little bit more for him, but I just don't see him kind of having the same upside as somebody like a Keelan Cole against Cincinnati, a Jefferson against Houston, and even a Gesicki against Seattle. I mean, that's somebody else I would consider tossing in my flex over Kelly, just because those guys are going to get targets. Those guys are going to be producing and look towards at least in bigger roles than Kelly would be. I mean, yes, Kelly gets the carries, but when we saw him in Carolina, where you thought he was going to be great, he had 43 yards rushing, 9 receiving yards, and he fumbled the ball once. You take away the fumble, he still gave you only 5-6 points. So at that point, is it really worth, yeah, he had 12 the last, week 1 and week 2, but against a tougher defense, is it really the time to deploy Kelly? Or do you kind of go with a more flyer guy and, Cole, Gesicki, or JJ, and just hope that they kind of break out, which I would be going with one of those guys if I were Dana.
Yeah, probably more big play potential, although Kelly has been getting a lot of touches over there in LA, that's for sure. So that is our last matchup prediction there, or kind of preview. We are in week 4, Krim. We're down to our last 2 weeks of divisional play before we head off to cross division play. And I'll tell you what, we usually, do a little bit of trash talk between Division 1 and Division 2 and all that stuff. I will say this. There is practically 3 teams in Division 2 with 400 points right now. There is not a single team yet in Division 1 that is with even 20 points of 400 points yet. So Division 2 looks like they're putting on a lot right now over there. Division 1's going to have to kind of step back up here. Before we go off, by the time we post this trade might be finalized, and might as well get our thoughts on it before we get off air, Krim. I was involved in another trade, at this time with Justin Finger. He said he's going to accept it when he gets back from the gym. So hopefully we'll see if that goes through or not. It's not official yet. But what do you take about Adrian Peterson being traded for Hollywood Brown?
It's not awful. I mean, for Tyler, it's massive. I mean, he needs Justin. Sorry, he needs a running back. It's kind of not a do or die for him, more so than it is for you, but it's just a depth move for him in regards to Hollywood Brown. He's not really going to use him by the looks of it. I mean, if you have Mike Evans, you have Calvin Ridley, you have AJ Green there. Your bench consists of Randall Cobb, who to me has been surprisingly good, McCole Hardman, who gets involved every now and again. It's worth it to kind of give up a guy that, yeah, he may pop off every now and again in regards to fantasy weeks, but he's not somebody you see consistently give you, 7, 8 points on the low end of things, and then, 14, 15 points on the high end of things. He's somebody last year who we saw was either going to give you 4 points or 24 points. And there was no like in between with him. So it's not, for you, it's a solid move in regards to you getting high. It's a low risk, high reward guy. And Justin's getting somebody to replace Carlos Hyde, who is going to get work. Obviously, if Carson doesn't play Hyde, it's perfectly fine. But it just bolsters his depth. I mean, you have Fournette who's out. Tony Pollard isn't really involved too much. You're hoping for a Zeke injury. Fingers crossed that never happens. But AP gives you an option to kind of throw into a flex. You can play matchups now with Hyde, Fournette, and AP. And AP's been the lead back there, and obviously to the point where you today, after our trade, dropped DeAndre Swift because you figured, and what has happened up to this point too is kind of shown that Swift is involved, but not to the point where he's kind of fantasy relevant, and you just need more from him at that point.
Yeah, and his play's actually been dropping week by week. I read he was only on 6 offensive snaps, so compared to Adrian Peterson's 40. So DeAndre Swift is very much becoming fantasy irrelevant despite his name. But yeah, if that trade goes through, that would be an interesting one. I just need to pull off some of the Detroit Lion guys. I'm going to have too many. I don't think I could theoretically go into a week starting Peterson, Galladay, and Hawkinson. So I feel like trading Adrian Peterson for Hollywood Brown when I have Lamar Jackson could provide some upside for me if Hollywood Brown starts becoming the number 1 receiver there like everyone anticipates. So that's about it. Anything else, Krim, on this week before we wrap her up?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody listening. Obviously, doing this every week is fun. It'll likely be my last one as I get traded off for messing up Justin and Tyler once again.
You did it again.
It's been fantastic.
You did it again.
Whoever is on here next week, I wish you all the best. I'll be listening, from my comfortable chair over here where I do my fantasy stuff.
What do you think our grades are going to be today, Graham? We got some interesting grades last week. Do you think you're going to at least get a C plus, B minus this week?
I'm definitely going to get a C plus just because I didn't do it until the end of the show. But regardless, I think a trade's happening. It's kind of created a rift between me and management. So
yeah,
I just give my thanks to the city of Sideline football, and it's been great, but I think we're all going to have to move on to bigger and better things.
All right, sounds like a plan. Well, good show, always fun. Week 4 of the fantasy football season coming at you tomorrow or today if you're listening. Excited to do it. Hopefully Eric can get on the right track of things and make this season interesting because 0-3 is not fun. All right, have fun. Talk to you guys later. See you next week.